Good evening, everyone, and thank you for registering for tonight's public hearing. It is a pleasure to join with you all for what we hope is an informative and productive session. My name is Charles Barker, and joining me tonight is Commissioner Krista Nash. We also have other members of the Public Engagement and Education Committee on the call, and we want to thank them for their support and help putting this together. We hope that this meeting serves as another opportunity for your voices to be heard so that your ideas can be incorporated into our recommendations for the governor and the legislature. This is a chance for all New Jerseyans, especially those most harmed by the failed war on drugs, like our Black and Brown communities, to share your input for the social equity investments that you feel should be made with cannabis tax revenue, to restore and elevate your municipalities and your neighborhoods. We will soon hear brief remarks from our Executive Director, Jeff Brown. Following Director Brown's remarks, Commissioner Nash and I will present a brief overview of our cannabis program and some of the statutory guidelines that determine how tax revenue will be allocated. After our update, the majority of the hearing is reserved for public input. We really, truly want to focus this meeting on hearing from you, the people. With that said, Director Brown, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Barker. Thank you, Commissioner Nash. And thanks to all the members of the public and our stakeholders who are joining us tonight for this historic conversation. And it is historic because these are the first hearings of this nature that will occur every year from here on out to determine how tax revenues raised by the sale of cannabis are invested, which Commissioner Barker and Commissioner Nash will get into in a second. And I just wanted to take a moment to just thank the Public Education Committee and the staff here that are supporting these hearings for your work. This is vital. The feedback we'll hear tonight is vital. And to me, there are many promises when it comes to legalization of cannabis. And to me, and I know to many others, there's none higher than the importance of reinvesting revenues back into communities that, as Commissioner Barker said, have been harmed by the criminalization of cannabis and other drugs for many years. So I just wanted to thank everybody here, and I'm going to pass it back over to Commissioner Barker and Commissioner Nash to take it from here.
Thank you, Director Brown. So welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. Before we get started on the public comment portion, we wanted to share with you an overview about the hearing process and also talk a little bit about the cannabis industry here in New Jersey. So let's look at that. The Commission is tasked with holding 3 regional hearings in the North, Central, and Southern regions of New Jersey in order to solicit public input on social equity investments from revenue derived from the cannabis industry here in New Jersey. After the hearings conclude, the Commission will review and analyze the data gathered at these hearings to provide a recommendation report to the Legislature. And no later than, actually prior to July 1st, the Legislature will provide to the Commission a statement listing the investments and also noting how these investments are intended to support and advance social equity. Now, I want to give you some background on the cannabis industry in New Jersey. In February of 2021, Governor Murphy signed into law legislation known as the CREAM Act, which legalized personal use cannabis for adults 21 and over, and it set the framework for the industry here in New Jersey. The law established 6 types of licenses, such as cultivating, which is growing, manufacturing, which is producing cannabis goods, wholesaling, storing, buying, selling in bulk, distribution, which is transporting bulk cannabis, retail, commonly known as dispensaries, and delivery, which is essentially like a Grubhub for cannabis. And along those lines, the Commission recognizes the importance and need for diversity in the industry, and it has prioritized the review of applications based upon certain categories that it deems most important to get up and running, such as economically disadvantaged areas and impact zones. And you'll notice at the bottom of the slide on the right, there is a QR code. I encourage you to scan that because it's going to give you a lot of information on these designations. One of the Commission's highest priorities is to support social equity businesses. And those businesses are owned by people who have lived in economically disadvantaged areas, have a certain median income, and who have a past cannabis conviction, and also diversely owned businesses, which are women-owned, disabled veteran-owned, and minority-owned. These businesses are going to employ thousands of New Jersey residents, and they're going to add to the coffers of the state and local municipalities. This evening, we are here to get your ideas on how revenue generated by these businesses that I previously mentioned, how that revenue should be appropriated. As you can see, the Commission has truly made social equity a priority. And now I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Barker. Commissioner Barker?
Thank you, Commissioner Nash, for sharing some of the social equity provisions in our rules and regulations that we hope helps to shape an inclusive cannabis ecosystem here in the Garden State. But what about the tax revenue generated from cannabis sales here in New Jersey? Where does that go and how will it be used? The CREAM Act establishes a CREAM fund where almost all cannabis revenue will be deposited once personal use legal sales begin. Listed here are some of the different statutory requirements for the legislature to follow when appropriating cannabis tax revenue. One major provision to highlight is that at least 70% of all tax revenue from retail sale of cannabis items will go towards social equity investments in impact zones. You heard Commissioner Nash briefly touch on impact zones during this presentation. They are areas that the legislature defined in statute that are supposed to represent and focus on socially and economically disadvantaged communities most harmed by the failed war on drugs. Another provision that I want to highlight from this list briefly is that tax revenue can be used to provide direct financial assistance to qualifying persons, which may be determined by the legislature based on these recommendations. This is yet another opportunity, as Director Brown said, to reinvest in the people and communities, especially Black and Brown communities, that continue to bear the brunt of the failed drug war. Tax revenue can also be appropriated to address operational costs for the CRC. In addition to rules focused on social equity and statutory requirements for appropriating tax revenue through a social equity lens, the CRC also used its authority from the CREAM Act to establish a social equity excise fee on cannabis cultivators. Personal use cannabis cultivators, not medicinal cannabis cultivators, will pay a fee on the sales of usable cannabis to another cannabis manufacturer, wholesaler, or retailer once legal sales begin. The fee is 1/3 of 1% of the average retail price per ounce for the first 9 months of legal sales. Can we go back to the previous slide? I just want to make a point so they can see this example. And so as you can see from this example, if the average price of an ounce of cannabis is $300 within the first 9 months of legal sales, then the excise fee will be 99 cents. States that have legalized cannabis continue to generate hundreds of millions, and in one case, billions of dollars in cannabis tax revenue annually. And after the first 9 months, the statute provides a scale for the CRC to adjust the fee as the cost of cannabis changes. And as is written as statute, the social equity excise fee shall be used for social equity investments. As you have heard, tax revenue and social equity excise fees are about investing in people and communities throughout New Jersey. And it is critical that we hear from you. Your voice truly does matter, and it is necessary to listen to your visions for social equity investments so that we can incorporate them into our memo. I'm reminded of a recent video clip I saw. There's a local municipal leader from right here in New Jersey, and he talks about kids having dreams. He talks about all of us having dreams for that matter. And as he describes the different levels of dreams, from fanciful dreams like being superheroes to realistic dreams like being homeowners, he challenges the listeners to imagine something different, to have a radical imagination that allows them to think about a place that is different from the one that they were forced and may still be forced to be in. As we get closer to the public input portion of this hearing, we hope that you are encouraged to share your radical imagination with us here tonight. Imagine your neighborhood with more, thriving with job opportunities, business development, green spaces and open playing fields for children, improved housing. The list goes on and on when it comes to the opportunities and changes that can be made for past, present, and future generations. Please bring these ideas to the table. As many of you may know, different states and municipalities across the country are using revenue from cannabis sales to make restorative justice investments. In Evanston, Illinois, municipal officials use cannabis tax revenue to create a reparations homeownership program for Black residents aimed at addressing discriminatory housing practices. In California, over $100 million in cannabis tax revenue has been used to provide grants to community groups that aid people in communities harmed by the failed war on people. The legislature also passed a $100 million plan to aid their local cannabis industries. Municipalities can now utilize grants to establish equity programs, hire staff, and further develop their local cannabis markets. Colorado has contributed over $400 million in cannabis tax revenue to the state's public education school system since November 2021. These are just some of the ways that tax revenue can be used for social equity investments, especially for Black and Brown people and in Black and Brown communities. As we conclude our presentation and gear up for public comments, we hope that you are informed enough to consider sharing your ideas and motivated enough that you are confident and excited to relay what you envision. And with that, I will now introduce our Director of Communications, Tony Ann Blake, who will go over protocol for the public comment period. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I invite everyone who has signed up and registered to speak to keep their ears open. If you have been to our public meetings or monthly public meetings, you understand how this process works. Everyone has 3 minutes. We invite you to be concise and respectful and mindful of everyone's time. If there are multiple speakers registered for the same organization, I ask that you designate one individual to speak. As always, you can submit your comments in writing to nj.gov/cannabis/meetings. I will start with the first 5 who have been registered. Please raise your hand and I will invite you to speak. Brenda Hopper, Lizzie Kirschenbaum, Diana McElroy, Chirali Patel, Hassan Austin. If you are here and you hear your name, please raise your hand and I will invite you to speak. Hassan Austin, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Thanks again for the time. So I just want to start off by saying, I think this forum is a wonderful idea. The social equity topic, it is certainly a hot button topic, but I always like to say, just given our experience, by the way, we work directly with the municipalities as well as on the private side, and trying to put the parties together as the best pathway towards licensing in the marketplace. As I mentioned, this is a very important issue. Often I always like to say that if you ask 10 people what is social equity, you'll get 10 different answers. And so where we land, certainly it is about that fair and equitable distribution of those resources. And that certainly comes in all shapes, sizes, and colors. The excise tax, we understand that how that thing will be doled out will that be equitable? Will all municipalities be able to share in those benefits? But at the same time, I do think there is plenty of opportunity to see revenue in all of the different classes. But the municipalities should have a willingness to engage in different concepts that may be beneficial for their town. I mean, all social equity is not created equal. Certainly, some towns will have interest more in support services. Other towns may be educational, things that fall into the cannabis nexus, if you will. But you may also find towns that are interested in other programs needing support, whether it be expungements, whether it be domestic violence programs, homelessness. I just think that the way the marketplace is set up, there's plenty of opportunity for a good amount of, let's say, fair and equitable distribution of those resources. But again, it's very important that municipalities, particularly the legal counsel within the towns, seek out the necessary experienced cannabis law practitioners that will serve these needs. Certainly, there's always this option of opting in, opting out. Most of them are opting out because they're not solutions that have been made available to them. And we're working diligently and tirelessly and trying to assist and provide help in this area. But I'll end with just saying that it's very important that the municipalities have a genuine willingness to provide fair, equitable, and safe opportunities in the New Jersey cannabis marketplace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker will be Chirali Patel. Chirali, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you to the commission really for doing this for the community and taking public comment consistently. I had comments prepared that I was going to talk about and, just go into different buckets that we could allocate tax revenue to, for example, grant opportunities, the business development centers, things that I've already spoken about in the past. But Commissioner Barker's speech really gave me some inspiration, motivation, in that he's suggesting us to be radical in our thinking. And I really am going to take him up on that opportunity. And I appreciate that you've given us until March 18th to follow up in written comments, because I think if we have an opportunity to be radical, why not? And I think a lot of times the families and that are associated with the victims of the drug war and those who were incarcerated and have, struggle when it comes to reentry, we sometimes forget about the families that have gone through this journey with them. And so I want to take them into consideration when we talk about social equity and reinvesting in our communities and what, reinvestment in impact zones actually looks like. So I won't take up more time in that. I really do appreciate Commissioner Barker for giving us the opportunity to get really creative in this, and thank you. And I will follow up in written comments.
Thank you. I'm going to repeat the first five again. The three that haven't spoken: Brenda Hopper, Lizzie Kirschenbaum, Diana McElroy. If you are here, you hear your name, please raise your hand. If not, I will move on to the next 5. Brendan Robinson, Ami Kachalia, Joe Johnson, Michael Cardona, Dr. Monique Hamilton. If you are here, please raise your hand. Brendan Robinson, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tony Ann, and good evening, Commissioner Barker, Commissioner Nash. I just want to start off by just echoing Shirley's comments and thanking you both for your comments, especially you, Commissioner Barker. They were very needed at this time, and I just want to jump right into this. My name is Brendan Robinson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the Minority Cannabis Academy here in New Jersey, alongside my brother, Stanley Okoro. We're an adult learning institution that focuses on the professional development, technical training, and overall career advancement of Black and Brown folks here in the cannabis industry. I want to start by making a brief announcement and then move into my comments. Last week, our company, the Minority Cannabis Academy, officially partnered with Shia Broadchender and the Harmony Dispensary. And Harmony is sponsoring our pilot program, which is going to launch this summer. The pilot program is going to consist of 25 minority cannabis job seekers who are living in impact zones and disenfranchised communities, those same communities we talked about in those opening comments. I want to just thank Shia. I want to thank Harmony for their support. Because of them, we're going to be able to build out a horticulture and bud tending course in time for our pilot this summer, and we couldn't be more excited. You know, this is going to be an 8-week program with a curriculum that's written by subject matter experts here in New Jersey who are actively working here in New Jersey. The purpose of this program is to ensure our graduates are job ready the second they leave our program, which brings me to my question and comment. You know, our partnership with Shia has given us the gas to get the car on the road. But as you all know, this industry is about growth and sustainability. So I think beyond this pilot, and I think beyond putting these 25 students through this amazing program, I think about the need for diversity in this industry. I think about the tax dollars we just spoke about, and I think about some of the other places those tax dollars are going to be intended to go. And you know, if we're going to talk about creating a diverse workforce, that one that involves job improvement, job placement, you talk about improved housing, Commissioner, we have to look at programs like this that are designed for minorities by minorities, by individuals who have been impacted by the war on drugs, by individuals who have seen the harm that this plant has done to our communities and now want to leverage this amazing monumental moment here in New Jersey where we're now legalizing this and enabling Black and Brown folks to have a stake in this industry. I love the fact that you all came out and prioritized applications, but not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. And we have to look at this industry across the board, whether you want to be a CEO, you want to be a bud tender, you want to grow cannabis, or you want to do an ancillary business. You know, here at the Minority Cannabis Academy, we are committed to this process, this initiative, and I just want to put that out there that we would love for the commission to take a deep look at us, a look at our initiatives, a look at our partners, and what we're looking to do here in New Jersey and how we're looking to impact our community. Again, my name is Brendan Robinson. Those are my comments, and I thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Next up is Ami Kachalia. Ami, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Barker, Commissioner Nash, and members of the commission for the opportunity to testify. I especially appreciate your call for us to really imagine the world that we want to live in and one that really centers justice and equity for all of us. My name is Ami Kachalia. I'm a campaign strategist at the ACLU of New Jersey. We and our partners fought hard for the inclusion of reinvestment dollars in the legalization law, and we've remained committed to ensuring that the communities that have been most harmed by the criminalization of marijuana see the benefit. After decades of marijuana prohibition, it's essential that the process to discuss how these community reinvestment dollars are truly participatory. The needs of each municipality, from Patterson to Newark to Camden, are distinct, and there must be meaningful opportunity for people from all of the impact zones to have their voices heard. We urge the CRC to build on these hearings, to hold more of them, to reach out to community groups and grassroots organizations, and in future years to solicit this community input long before the annual budget process starts, so that the recommendations that community give are more fully incorporated into the budget before the governor's proposed budget is released. As we all know, community reinvestment without real community input isn't enough. And I also want to acknowledge that the funding that we're discussing here today is around the social equity excise fee, which is the smaller of the two pots of community reinvestment money that will be available for marijuana legalization. And unlike with the excise fee, there are no hearings or public input processes currently planned. And so I urge the legislature to follow in the example of these hearings and to hold our own hearings on community reinvestment and to truly engage with community members as they go through the budget process and allocate these community reinvestment dollars. And finally, I just want to share what this money should not be used for. Funding for law enforcement under the guise of community reinvestment is not what we are looking for. We want real community reinvestment, the support that supports the kind of needs, things like social services and harm reduction and educational support and economic development that truly increase access to opportunity for New Jerseyans and help communities thrive. New Jersey has spent over $1 billion to enforce racist marijuana laws that disproportionately harm Black and Brown people through the police and courts and corrections. And marijuana prohibition and the drug war broadly have resulted in decades of increases in funding to police at the expense of disadvantaged communities across the state. And so in making these recommendations to the legislature, we urge the CRC to prioritize funding for services and programs that help communities flourish and that prioritize justice and equity, rather than perpetuating the injustices of our current system. So I thank you for the opportunity to testify today. If you have any questions or would like further discussion, we would be happy to talk more offline. And thank you again.
Thank you, Ami. Next up is Joe Johnson. Joe, go ahead.
Hello, and good evening, and thank you for the chance to testify. My name is Joe Johnson, and I am testifying tonight as a resident of Newark, New Jersey. It's very important that cannabis revenue is spent properly and in a way that truly provides reparations to the communities that have been most harmed. But for this first year of cannabis revenue, New Jersey really should put significant funding towards providing real access to ownership in the industry to applicants from impact zone municipalities. This could take the form of grants or low or no interest loans to help with securing property or the technical and legal assistance that's necessary to submit a competitive application. These funds could also go directly to impact zone municipalities to assist them in propping up their own municipal equity programs that could be a lot more narrowly tailored to the needs of the community. All of the causes that the people have discussed today are worthy of support, but if New Jersey does not invest in equity in the industry at the very beginning for those communities that were most impacted by the criminalization of cannabis, it's just never going to happen. As we've seen over the last decade, other states have propped industries up without thinking about equity at the forefront, only to realize 4 or 5 years later that they've created an industry that is monopolized by wealthy white people and anybody who's a multi-state operator. I think we have enough. I think we have enough experience from these other states to not make the same mistakes here, and really make sure that there is initial funding to really even the playing field and help local entrepreneurs get over the financial assistance hurdle that exists. Finally, I'd just like to echo the previous testimony that none of this revenue should be going towards law enforcement purposes. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I really appreciate your commitment to social equity in this space.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Monique Hamilton. Go ahead.
Hello, I am Dr. Monique Hamilton. I am board certified in internal medicine. I am the co-founder and lead physician for the Dr. Monique Hamilton Medical Center, DMMC, in South Orange, New Jersey. For decades, minorities have suffered inequality as it pertains to the criminal justice system, financial system, and health system. I applaud the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission in its efforts to develop and enforce programs and regulations for the New Jersey cannabis industry that incorporates social justice and equity. It is imperative that social equity also be applied to medical cannabis. As a physician, I have witnessed the impact of healthcare inequality in patients from disadvantaged communities. There have been times when patients can't afford to pay for important medication monthly and as a result, don't take the medication as prescribed. I have also cared for patients who have been unable to see a specialist because they are unable to afford the co-payment associated with the visit. These difficult decisions often result in substandard care, which prevents the patient from having adequate control of chronic conditions. Disadvantaged patients who may benefit from medical cannabis may have difficulty affording it and maintaining adequate follow-up with a New Jersey cannabis program physician, diminishing the bona fide doctor-patient relationship. New Jersey Statute 24, Section 6I-1 requires that physicians must hold a bona fide relationship with any patient they wish to register. The physician must be providing ongoing assessment, care, and treatment of the patient's debilitating medical condition. This bona fide relationship is defined as, among other things, the physician has seen and or assessed the patient for the debilitating medical condition on at least 4 visits. It would be helpful if there were a subsidy program available for disadvantaged patients. This will help with making medical cannabis more accessible to New Jersey residents who have had difficulty reaching treatment goals with conventional therapies. Cannabis education is also essential in ensuring that all communities are informed about the benefits of medical cannabis. Many people are unaware of the chronic medical conditions that can be successfully treated with cannabis and may be suffering because they are unable to achieve treatment goals with conventional therapies. Due to the stigma associated with cannabis and health and wellness in general, education is the most critical component in breaking down that stigma to help save people's lives. The CRC and municipalities should consider establishing a cannabis education initiative. The DMMC would be more than willing to participate in the initiative through the cannabis education workshops we offer. I am passionate about educating patients about their health to empower them so they can overcome their health challenges. In conclusion, I would like to thank the CRC for providing the public with an opportunity to give input on how the collective fees on the sale of cannabis products can be used to improve our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. The next 5 up, John L. Smith, Sharon Y. Brown, Ruby Clark, Matt Dragon, Keisha Bowman. If you are here and you've heard your name, John L. Smith, Sharon Y. Brown, Ruby Clark, Matt Dragon, Keisha Bowman. If you are here and you've heard your name, please raise your hand and you'll be invited to speak. Not seeing any of those names, I will move on to the next 5. Well, Keisha Bowman. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. Yes. Hello. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that you guys can hear me. Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Keisha Bowman. I am a community organizer and business community liaison here on Halsey Street in Newark. Let me first say thank you to the CRC for including the public's opinion on this matter and allowing our voices to be heard. I come from a community of entrepreneurs, artists, creatives, business owners, homeowners, and residents. And we are really focused and educated. We're really focused on making sure our community is educated on all different levels as it relates to cannabis. And we are most hopeful that when it comes to funding, that the funding will go to things that will help to benefit us, such as funding for expungement clinics, free education for our communities, from childcare to college, also funding for things like technical assistant programs for Black women who are entrepreneurs in the cannabis industry, and also funding that will just go towards events and different types of, we have a lot of events down here. We have a lot of artists that come together and we're able to kind of tell a story through what it is that we do. And so when it comes to our social impact, when it comes to cannabis, you know, there are a lot of things that are missing in our area. And it is something like a consumption lounge or just being educated on how we can become licensed and how we can go from unregulated to regulated. So any of the funding that is going to go in that lane that will help us to be able to properly, you know, utilize these services will be great for our community. Thank you so much for this opportunity and allowing me to be able to come on and speak on behalf of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I will be calling the next 5 names since no one else is here. Odette Dumas, Sean McLean, Casey Melvin, Anton Henshaw, Lisa Chaudhary, Odetta Dumas, Sean McLean, Casey Melvin, Anton Henshaw, Lisa Chaudhary. For any of those individuals present, please raise your hand using your Controls? No? Okay. Asata Mann, Reva Foster, Raquel Romans Henry, Tiffany Salas, Zelly Thomas. Asata Mann, Reva Foster, Raquel Romans Henry, Tiffany Salas, Zelly Thomas. No? Okay. Eric Ilfgren, Edward Grimes, Kendall Clark, Edward Lemeau, Joe Hernandez. Eric Ilfgren, Edward Grimes, Kendall Clark, Edward Lemeau, Joe Hernandez. I see Grimes, Edward Grimes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Good evening.
Grimes?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Edward Lefty Grimes. I'm with sativacross.org. We're a 501c3 here in New Jersey fighting for disabled rights, wheelchair access, and cannabis patients' rights. The last few years, patients feel like we've been left behind. And because of the last few years, we were taxed. Our cancer was taxed, our multiple sclerosis was taxed, our wheelchairs were taxed. And now the disabled is asking for representation for that taxation. And we want wheelchair access. We need wheelchair access throughout New Jersey. There's police stations in New Jersey without wheelchair access. And believe me, I'm not trying to get patients locked up easier. I'm trying to get patients to be able to access public services easier. So when you talk about police stations not having accessibility, that's shocking to me that we have an issue with this. South Amboy Police Station has no wheelchair access, and they have no funding for a wheelchair access ramp. They're moving their building in 2 years. So they have no plans on putting a wheelchair ramp in. So for 2 years, people that are suffering and dying cannot get into the South Amboy Police Station. In Brielle, there's no wheelchair access to the Brielle Police Station. There's no access to the Bayonne Police Station at night. Union City, another one with no wheelchair access. You have schools in Bayonne with one ramp to go into the entire school. So children are fire hazards in their own school because there's no proper exits to Bayonne High School, to many of the schools in Hudson County and around New Jersey. We deserve better. You have urban enterprise zones in New Jersey that typically offer a tax reduction for people shopping there. If you're in a wheelchair, you can't get into half of these businesses in the urban enterprise zones. Shocking. Now the thing with the gas stations coming up, we're gonna have to start pumping our own gas. How are they gonna worry about disabled rights and people disabled pumping gas? Have they even thought about how they're gonna pump gas for disabled people? Like, what do you expect a disabled person to do? I don't know what they do in other states, but in New Jersey, we have an opportunity to be proactive and plan ahead so that disabled people, when they have to pump gas, that at least they can do it without jumping through hoops like they've been doing for the last few years. Disabled people need help. They need to be put first in life and not last, as we've seen in New Jersey. We need compassion. We need to put the last first and to leave the 99 and go back for the first, to go back for the one. That's what it's all about, to help the sick and the dying. And that's what we're here to do with our 501c3. We do that. We advocate. You've heard me at these meetings before advocating for disabled rights. And there's a lot we can do with that money, and give us wheelchair ramps. All over New Jersey, there's a lot of places that need wheelchair ramps. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to call that last four again. Eric Ilfgren, Kendall Clark, Edward Lemeau, Joe Hernandez. Joe Hernandez. I see Joe Hernandez. Go ahead, Joe. Joe, go ahead. You're on mute, Joe. Joe Hernandez, you're on mute. Okay. I will call.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
Okay, my name is Joe Hernandez. I represent the Essex County Latino American Chamber of Commerce. I'm the vice chair. Our concern is about the industry that was, when they issued the license and operations for the medical industry, when they were building these facilities and whatnot, the community didn't benefit from anything, construction aspect of it, any construction work or any business out of that. So we would like to make sure that when they issue the licensing for the recreation facilities, that they implement that the community be a part of the construction aspect of it, in dealing with hiring people from the community and also providing opportunities for businesses to do some construction work. That's one of our concerns, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And the other issue that we have is that we provide what we call a 7-step seminar every year to the community to educate the community for their businesses and how to get registered, to be able to open bank accounts, and the difference between an LLC or a C or LLC in reference to how to obtain licensing from the state. And we would like to see if we could get some funding so we could get this funded every year and make it happen. Because right now what we're doing is coming out of our pockets and we get donations to implement these programs. The last time we had one, we had it at Rutgers University Law School, business school in Newark, and we had a nice crowd, and then everybody was very happy with it, and they were very educated on how to go about opening another business, because a lot of individuals don't know what they need to be able to open up a bank account or to be able to obtain a license to operate a business, and specifically in the construction industry. Because if you don't get a license to obtain permits, you can't do any work, and then that leaves everybody out. So that's our concern, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen this time around. Thank you.
Thank you. Felix Flores, Kamisha Burchett, Wayne Burini. Felix Flores, Kamisha Burchett, Wayne Burini. If none of those individuals are present, I think Mr. Burini, go ahead.
Hello, thank you for having me on. Thank you. Just wasn't really sure what this meeting was to. Wasn't sure if I don't understand why we're trying to tax the heck out of cannabis. I hear people like, oh, well, the taxes should go to Black and brown communities or communities affected by cannabis. How do you figure that one out? How do you figure out, what communities were affected by the illegalization of cannabis? I mean, because in the town I live in, I live in a, since we're all I hate to even I live in a white community, and boy, we've been ravaged. I mean, woof. I can't tell you how many kids got arrested for marijuana, and next thing you know, how many kids that went to college that got kicked out of college in my town because they were, arrested with marijuana. So I don't understand how you could judge which communities, affects what. If we are gonna go give the taxes on cannabis away, I think it should be given to the medical marijuana patients in New Jersey. I think the taxes, should go to pay for the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission. And I also think that more members need to be added to the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. I'd be very surprised to know. So I'd like to find out if any of them ever used cannabis. I mean, This is the kind of stuff we should be talking about, not like how are we going to spend the tax money. Let's legalize it first. Let's figure out how we should tax it. Why don't we tax cannabis like we tax other produce? How do we tax tomatoes? How do we tax broccoli? I mean, another way we could think about it, you know, maybe we could tax cannabis like we tax alcohol. Where does the money that New Jersey makes off of alcohol taxes go? I say we should just stop worrying about taxing cannabis, period. That's all. I thank you for your time. And I'd like to have some answers on the Cannabis Regulatory Commission members, if they ever used cannabis.
Thank you for your comments. Since we have not, I'm going to go back to the top of our list to see if anybody else is now present. Brenda Hopper, if you are here and you hear your name, please raise your hand and you'll be invited to speak. Brenda Hopper. Lizzie Kirschenbaum, Diana McElroy, Michael Cardona, John L. Smith, Sharon Y. Brown, Ruby Clark, Matt Dragon, Odetta Dumas, Sean McLean, Casey Melvin, Anton Henshaw, Lisa Chaudhry, Asada Mann, Riva Foster, Raquel Romans Henry, Tiffany Salas, Zelly Thomas, Eric Ifgan, Kendall Clark, Edward Lemon, Felix Flores, Kamisha Burchett. If any of those individuals are present who had registered to speak, please raise your hand. Since none of those individuals are present and we do have some time, if you are interested in speaking on the record for today's meeting, please raise your hand and you will be invited to speak. We ask that you start with your name and any organization you may be associated with. And as always, this will go to the topic of the day. We will be staying on this topic and it will still be 3 minutes per person. Edward Ortiz, please start by identifying yourself, name, first and last name, and your organization. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the CRC for this opportunity. My name is Edwin Ortiz. I'm the founder of the Returning Citizen Support Group, which is a grassroots organization of men and women who are formerly incarcerated. In the last 2 years, the state of New Jersey has released more than 5,300 people from prison with no expanded funding for services, housing, or expanded reentry support. In fact, as recently as February 10th of this year, at least 260 people were released from prison and halfway houses as part of the state's early release program. Another 300 people are slated to be released in March. Without a grant, our named Returning Citizen Support Group has been providing those services, piecing together in-kind donations with our faith-based community partners, meeting our brothers and sisters at the gate, and helping them navigate the housing system, getting jobs as a means of survival. We have proven that many more of our brothers and sisters can and should return home to become the foundation of a more inclusive economy that works for everyone. What are we asking? 1, housing. 8 to 12 months of supported housing vouchers and placement support for returning citizens that need it. 2,000 supportive housing vouchers over the next 3 years to build new housing to serve the growing needs of our community. Low-cost debt facilities for formerly incarcerated and system-impacted Black and Brown entrepreneurs to buy their own homes. 2, Reentry and prevention supportive services led by directly impacted people. Expand gate money to account for inflation and cost of living. Expand reentry support for returning citizens from their peers to navigate needed services. Expand prevention and intervention resources for community-based violence prevention intervention organizations led by system impacted communities. 3, jobs and ownership opportunities, specifically cannabis. Black people in Essex County were 3 times more likely to be arrested on cannabis-related charges than their white counterparts, according to the ACLU. And yet, formerly incarcerated people and Black and Brown and Indigenous-owned companies have not been included in the legal industry. We, as returning citizens, demand priority on all applications for Black and Brown formerly incarcerated majority-owned companies. Entrepreneurship, training, boot camps, and business development support from successful social equity operators from other states, waived application fees, waived site control mandate, and subsidized application assistance for Black and Brown formerly incarcerated majority-owned companies.
Thank you so much for your comment, Mr. Ortiz. Michael Hoffman, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to indicate that I am in the southern region, so I'll probably be listening into that one. My name is Michael Hoffman. I'm an attorney down in Vineland. However, I have represented and been involved in several expungement clinics up in the North Jersey area. So I believe that this is absolutely pertinent to that issue. One of the areas that I believe that the social equity funds should be spent on is remedying the war and cleaning up after it. And that includes and is especially involves the expungement of prior offenses. Those for people who are involved in cannabis related offenses and those who are related in non-cannabis related offenses. All those people should be remedied by the system that is out there to help them and the system that they are funding. In my written comments, I included that I am doing a expungement program throughout the state, but I also indicated a second program that the CRC should consider. And I believe it echoes Commissioner Barker's comments earlier about thinking outside the box. What I suggested in my written comments is very similar to NJ Cure, the insurance for the underprivileged and the ability to provide insurance to those people who would be applying in classes 4 and 6 for transportation of cannabis licenses and delivery licenses. Those people would be extremely benefited by having subsidized or free insurance as a limiting that barrier to entry to the industry. That is thinking extremely out of the box, and I hope that the commission will take that type of thought into consideration. Those types of ideas are what should be welcome and benefit and would absolutely benefit all New Jerseyans, but especially people who have been most disproportionately affected by the war on drugs, and that is people of color. We need to not only create an equal industry, but an equitable industry. And that is something that I am out here attempting to do as often as I possibly can. I'll leave the others comments to my written comments. And should you need any comments from me, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Next up, we have Michael Hoffman.
I just talked.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I think I just, Chris Velazquez, go ahead.
Yes, hello.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. Yes. My name's Christian Velasquez. I have been raised and still live in one of the towns declared impact zone. That town is Dover, New Jersey. I would love to see my town benefit from social equity and see these funds be allocated towards things that directly benefit the community and people who have been impacted on the war on drugs. I mean, the first place I want to see some of the money go to is our school system. I think we should be investing into our school system. We don't even have buses here. We have kids in elementary school still walking in the snow and rain to school. So, I mean, that's really important. Another thing is I think we should have like a cannabis community center, a place where people can meet and learn about cannabis. They can get their records expunged for free. There can be resources for micro cannabis businesses. A cannabis community center would directly benefit people of the people of Dover and share cannabis knowledge and culture with the public. Also, we need to help create micro cannabis real estate. I myself I want to have a cannabis license. I've started the Dover Cannabis Company, and we're looking for space in Dover for a delivery or wholesale license, but there's nowhere to go between what the town has restricted on where we can be and what's available out there. There's nothing really that you can get 2,500 square feet that's affordable to open. So that's really hard for a micro cannabis business to find a location. So I don't know if we could like put the money into building like micro cannabis real estate so we can lease out to like affordable to, you know, social equity or micro cannabis applicants. That would be really great. Also grants. We just need help entering this industry. You know, we've been playing catch up all these years, and you know, we want to see at the table, and we just need a little help. And hopefully how this whole is supposed to work with the social equity, it works. So thank you for your time, and yeah, have a good night.
Thank you. Mitchell Colbert, go ahead.
Hi, this is Mitchell Colbert. Not sure if you can hear me. There we go. I think you can, like, time started. Awesome. So I'm not here representing any organization, and the main thing I wanted to touch on was something you said in the introduction. You're pointing to California, my home state, and the example of equity that we've set out here. But we're also telling a cautionary tale right now. If you aren't aware, California businesses are honestly dying under taxes. The tax burden is completely unreasonable. It's very hard for them to be competitive with the underground, unregulated market. And as a result, many people are leaving the industry unable to stay in business, which means no tax revenue at all if there are no businesses to tax. As a result, the state is now looking to lower taxes on cannabis, but they're getting pushback from the exact kind of beneficiaries you're looking at here. Communities that are disadvantaged, nonprofit groups that are helping them have come to rely on these taxes because, as you know, if it's an underserved community, they've been underserved chronically for years economically. There's no resources going there. So any resources, these extra money from cannabis taxes is great for those communities. But these efforts to reduce the taxes are now getting that pushback. And it's a fight between the industry itself, which is trying to stay alive in the face of a thriving unregulated market, and then the communities who are depending on those taxes that were set unreasonably high at the beginning. My advice to you would be set the taxes low, make the taxes reasonable at the start, and plan to ramp them up later once the industry is strong enough to actually support them, rather than doing what we're doing in California, where we set them ridiculously high at the start. So high that people have been trying to get them lowered ever since we legalized it. You know, it's much easier to go up in taxes rather than go down. You know, as much as people talk about cutting taxes and it being easy and a great thing, it's not if someone is relying on those taxes. as is the case of many nonprofit groups here in California who are fighting to keep those taxes high in the face of potentially tanking the cannabis industry. So it's a balancing act, and you should definitely look at the cautionary tale that we are setting out here in California. You know, it hasn't all been great in the Golden State, unfortunately. I supported Prop 64. I still support Prop 64, but the regulators got things really wrong after the people voted to legalize. And those regulations are really critical that you get those right. Thank you. And I know you have a very hard job, so thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Colbert. Diana McElroy, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. First off, thank you to you guys for opening this up to the public. I want to start off in saying that a lot of the comments that are made here tonight, especially from Mitchell, who just spoke prior to me, we have the opportunity in New Jersey to do it correctly. We have the opportunity to look at previous states and learn from the history and really implement things that make a difference. I agree that education is needed. Let's look at the impacted zones and let's teach them on the medical aspect of cannabis, the benefits. Let's teach them how they themselves can benefit and have generational wealth from this plant. But it has to be a really honest conversation that not everyone's going to be a cultivator. We really need to teach people how to take the skill set they already have and turn it into this new emerging industry, because there is a need for a workforce and there are opportunities there. But the opportunities have to be laid out very clearly and very honestly. We need to, let's look at the education. Let's look at the medical aspect. We need to make sure that doctors are not gouging their patients. We need to make sure that doctors are actually teaching their patients on how to utilize this product correctly. Because if you teach patients, then that's more likely for patients to teach their friends who are just using it, quote unquote, adult use. Let's be honest, this product really brings on physical benefits all throughout, for whether you're using it as a medical patient or you're just using it as an adult consumer. I believe we need to expand the education to the younger people who are 21 and over. Hopefully we could go even younger than that and teach them the real honest aspects of this plant and how it impacts their body and how, the different forms of consumption and when it will hit you. We talk openly about alcohol. We should talk about this plant that's coming to the market. I really hope the CRC has a clearer and more honest conversation about consumption lounges. I was very disappointed in the last meeting that the CRC held regarding consumption lounges and the festivals and how horrible they are for you and the medical aspect, because really, that doctor was not only a killjoy, but she was also really someone that is not from New Jersey and was not for the joy and the physical aspect that festivals and consumption lounges could bring. Not only that, but let's talk about people who live in federalized housing and need somewhere safe and somewhere they can consume and not worry about the law throwing them out. That's it. I'm going to conclude now because I could keep talking. I appreciate you and keep up the good work.
Thank you. If there is anyone else who would like to offer a public comment, please raise your hand. Otherwise, Commissioners Nash and Barker, we are at the end of the comments this evening.
Well, thank you all for your meaningful comments. They are appreciated. And I just want to say that New Jersey is on the cusp of this new and exciting industry. It's going to be dynamic, it's going to be progressive, and it's going to prioritize social justice and fairness. And I think we're doing that by all being here today. So I just want to thank you again, and I will turn it over to Commissioner Barker.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. And as Commissioner Nash just stated, just want to reiterate our thankfulness for you joining this public hearing and sharing your thoughts. or just listening in as you prepare to share during the next opportunity. Please refer to our website for more information and general updates. As Commissioner Nash alluded to earlier during our presentation, there's a lot of helpful information on our website. And please, we cannot stress this enough, encourage your friends and family in Central and South Jersey to join the upcoming public hearings. We truly do want to hear from you, and we're hoping at the next two hearings that we are taking this through 9. And so definitely thankful for what we heard today. We're excited to incorporate it into our recommendations, and we encourage you to join us again next week. Thank you again, and have a blessed evening. Take care.